Alright guys, we have a new project to take a look at. This is also another Unity demo. This Unity demo is actually, I don't know what this this one is called. I think it's called the survival shooter or nightmare bear thing. I'm not sure what this is called. This is a very famous popular demo that Unity came out with to kind of start to show off some of the features in the 4.x series and release of Unity. There was also another few demos like this that came out right around towards the 5.0 update. Now this has been revised for Unity 5, and audio is actually a really easily graspable component inside of this demo. Because this is already set up and functioning, I'm going to go ahead and borrow some of the functionality that's here just to explain a few new concepts. So what I want to bring into light here is that there are a series of groups that have been created in a mixer. So last video we talked about the audio mixer groups and how those function and are created and sort of set up throughout the scene. Now we're going to start to kind of see more of their relevance inside of the project and how easily they are to be addressed via code. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you their master mixer. By default, they will include the master group. This is the one that routes, like I was saying in the last video, directly to the main camera. So that will go route to the main camera, and then they have elected to do a music bus and a sound effects bus, kind of similar to what we were setting up before with the SFX and MX bus. So that's really quick what they're doing. Let me play this demo just to show you what this looks like. Little kind of, I don't know if it's a toy or a stuffed teddy bear or something. Nightcap, zombified, sock puppety looking bears. They come in waves and we're supposed to not let them touch us. Okay. Elements that are around here. You get hit, you see the red, game over. So that's pretty much the bulk of the demo here. I'm going to go out of play mode here and uncheck the maximize on play. The scene is very basic and simple. It's a few 3D models, assets that are all bound as a child of environment, and so on. So we know we have sound effects routed here to a bus. We also see that in this scene they have elected to make a child mixer of master mixer called sound effects. So sound effects could have been broken down a little bit more granularly, and that's what they've elected to do, was take the sound effects master group that's here and split that up to even more granular groups. So all the enemies will have their channel, the player will have his own channel, the gunshots will have their own channel, and then that master bus routes to this sound effects group. The sound effects group routes to the master. So that's their flow inside of this scene. Since there's only one music clip, it didn't make sense for them to break down the music portions here. Say if they had some sort of dynamic music system, that's when it would have been probably very appropriate to break that down into a little bit more granular mixer components there. So they did not have that, so yeah, one track, one group, nothing needed there. You also see that there's this snapshot section this time. There's some stuff here, and that's something that we have to talk about as well. Here's what I want to bring into light here. The section that's down here, we said that we were going to talk about these. These are the effects that are added just like plugins are on any digital audio workstation. So you launch Pro Tools, you have the ability to put in as inserts these plugins that are down here. It's kind of that same sort of effect here. So you have the ability to change up all of the dynamics of the scene simply via a plugin, and you don't have to code these very long events any longer. And these can be easily done with a few component pieces that are added now. So it's very helpful. Let me show you kind of what I mean by this. So here's something that is a little bit of a problem. it's very kind of sharp. It doesn't really kill us or anything like that to hear. But if we wanted to add a little bit more into this gunshot sequence, we could do that. We could allow these sound effects to drive the music down when needed. So here's a way that we could do that. If we took the sound effects bus and if we added a preset effect on this here, by just hitting this add, this whole list of things pop up. And here's what we could do. What we could do is we could set a send on this here, a send to duck the volume on music. So how does that work? So one of these has to send its sound into another channel, and the other channel has to be reading that sound, and it's looking for a threshold at which to apply an attenuation on the channel that it's put on. So if you can't follow that, maybe let's show it visually here. What if we put a duck volume on this here? So what does duck mean? Duck, just as it would apply a physical action, if something was coming towards your head and you did not want to be impaled by that object, you would duck it down. So just like you would with that, we can duck this fader down to a quieter attenuated level. I think they have this at -10. I like to touch these things here a lot when I'm lecturing, so these get all messed up. Just a part of my bumbling here. But anyway, this -10 is what it was set at. If we wanted to drive it down a little bit further when these sound effects get a little kind of up and crazy, what we could do is we could put a duck volume on the music channel saying, hey, duck this down if when whatever is sent into it crosses a certain threshold. So here is that duck volume component that's up here. Here's the threshold, and this looks just like a compressor. So if you're familiar with compressors in the digital audio workstation, it looks just like that. So there's a threshold, there's a knee at which point it intersects, the ratio at which it is able to open. They classify their ratios in percentages, whereas in a DAW you usually see like 3:1 or 10:1 or something like that. So you can kind of go off of a visual reference as that's one, 1:1 here. There's nothing really being crossed over. So as it crosses the threshold, then the knee will determine the slope at which it is attenuated. Okay, so there's an attack time. The attack time is how quickly in milliseconds it will start to apply the attenuation. The release time is how quickly after the sound source is no longer supposed to be attenuated, how long does it take to release the attenuation off there. So it's kind of like a fade back to a normal state. The makeup gain, which allows, as it's being compressed, it can also squash and drive the lower part of the bottom up as well. So as it's being squashed down, you can also bring up the lower portions of this. So you're kind of squashing the sound a little bit. The knee refers to the point at which they intersect. So how harsh is that knee? And then a side chain mix, we'll need to leave this at 100%. But essentially, without this here being set to 100%, it's not going to apply this effect the way that we want it. Okay, so now that it's at least here, let's show you how you set this duck volume up. Now notice you see this warning that's up here, no send sources connected, and that's because what it's saying is that in order for this to work, it needs to have some sort of other input to drive this value. So if we come over here to the mixer sound effects, what we can do is we can add a send to this. And it's the exact same thing as in Pro Tools, as we would send our audio to another group or bus or something like that, an auxiliary channel. It's the same thing here. So we pop that send in here. Now that send now shows up in the inspector over here once we have sound effects selected. and we're going to send it to something that is looking for a send. Now, the only thing that's set up here to look for a send is our music duck volume, which is over on the music channel. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then it's going to ask for the send level. So the send level is the copy of the signal that it's going to send. How great does that signal need to be? So -80 is completely inaudible. That's the fader brought all the way down to this -80 level. That's completely inaudible. So what we need to do is we need to take this and take it all the way to 0 dB or whatever level that you feel is necessary for the copy of the signal to be driven into that bus. Usually 9 times out of 10 it is going to be 0 dB, which is going to be at unity there. So if you're not sending that powerful of a signal, it's usually because you're trying to mix it at this point as well, so that when multiple things are coming in, they come in at the right level. If it's one thing going in, then usually you send the whole signal itself, and you don't try to attenuate it. So if that's confusing, just always go 0 dB if it's one thing. So, but they give you the option in case you had multiple things coming into music and you wanted to assign some sort of priority between the signals. Okay, so coming back to music, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit play. I'm going to hit this edit and play mode. We cannot change any of the mixer effects unless this edit by play mode is enabled. We don't want to die, so I'm going to kind of play the game while we're kind of sort of watching over on the right-hand side. Now, do you see how every time I shoot the gun, there's a sound effect? That's the loudest sound effect. So see that red bar? That red bar driving down? That's the attenuation. So that's driving the signal. No, I'm not. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to really drive this threshold up. Now, hopefully you can hear this. But every time I shoot the gun now, the music disappears. Whoa! Boss is out. So, every time I shot the gun, because my threshold was so low before this engages, the music completely just disappears. Just completely disappears because it ducks so greatly. So that's duck volume there for you. It's a very popular effect. If you want to have something take priority over everything else, you could have some sort of sound effects. Say if it was a grenade going off in the scene. Say it was a grenade, right? And you want that grenade to have that very, explosive, ear-ringing type of noise and all that sort of stuff. You would then have to think from an audio standpoint, wow, okay, the grenade goes off. I want that concussion sort of sound, and then I want all other sound to just completely fade out just for a little bit. Hey, you might be able to accomplish that with a duck volume right there, instead of trying to, with code, address every single, game object that has an audio source, or just, addressing this here and say, you might find some creative way to just pop on one of these extra channels, that is grenade effects or something like that. You might be able to say that, hey, when this goes off, take everything down that has that duck volume on it. So, you can play with a few effects there and come up with some creative solutions there. Now, what I want to do is I want to put a lot of tools in front of you. I don't want to tell you how to use them. That just puts you in a box here. You need to understand the tools so that you can come up with creative ways to manipulate them. I'm not, especially in the audio realm here too, there is a code of conduct to follow, of course. In respect to what's proper and what's not, but at the same time, there's so much creativity that can be injected in the way that you do things and come up with things. So as long as it's efficient on memory usage and resources and processing power and things like that, let's go nuts. So I'm a real big believer in going through the tools and making sure that we understand those, rather than saying no, do it like this because that's the way that the textbook teaches you. So there's really nothing, on this that tells you to do it one way or the other. Like I said, as long as it lines up with readability, it follows some sort of easily read pattern that's not a pain to deal with. It's great on processing power and memory consumption. No problem. Let's go for it. So we will come across some design patterns and things like that, I'm sure. But for now, just want to open up that creativity because that's where a lot of the stuff is going to come from. Okay, so kind of moving on here, I want to show you something else that they have in the scene that's kind of interesting. I'm going to go ahead and bump up the music a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and hit pause. You're not dying. Okay, ready? Pause. Unpause. Pause. So it doesn't seem to work every single time. Is the way that I'm doing it is kind of weird because I'm trying to capture the screen. Do you hear how kind of distant it sounds now with the music once I hit the pause screen? So what's actually happening here is there is a snapshot that's being applied during the pause and unpause state. So snapshot, what is a snapshot? So a snapshot is kind of like in the digital audio workstation, it's kind of like an automation track that's being written. What's automation, if you're not familiar with that? It's a way of writing something that will control in an automated fashion a series of settings. So this piece of data is placed onto the tracks and groups and all those sorts of things, depending on what we're in. If we're in Pro Tools or something like that, and the faders will move automatically according to a script that you draw with these little points and all that. So if you've ever seen guys sitting at a mixing console, either at a live concert or something like that, and they're working on the console, but you see all of the faders that they're working on just flying around automatically. There's automation that's running in the scene. You can do that as well too. And the cool thing about that is, see these code states here. Now, when you look at this, you see there's really not much change here between these two states. What it's showing is it's showing a snapshot. So if I were to say that in the pause state, we took the music and we were to attenuate it to -50. In the unpause state, it would still remain at -10. In the pause state, it would then go down to -50. Let me show you what that sounds like. There it is. Okay. So it calls that snapshot. You see it go down to -50. So what's actually happening is there's a script. There's a script that's running inside of here, and I'm pretty sure that it has something to do with pause. There it is. And it's transitioning between these two snapshots. Now this is a new data type that's accessible. Okay, so this is a new data type that is accessible where you can load up an audio mixer snapshot and you can transition between the two. And they have a function that you can use called transition to, provided a float time, and you can switch between the two states. It's very useful, very useful. So let me see if they actually have pause panel, pause text. Let me see if they have a root object, menu canvas, pause. Here we go. Okay, so here's where the pause script, I could have just searched for the pause script as well. The pause manager script that's here. So yeah, you see these public accessible data types that the programmer has linked to this here, where we can enter in these two snapshots. To make a snapshot, all we have to do is pop it down here. We can say Tim Snap. Now, Tim Snap could do some crazy stuff. I could have all of this sort of stuff going on, and all we do is we set all of the settings as we want them to be set. In this case here, I'll actually turn mine way up, do a bunch of cool stuff, I'm going to distort my sound here as well, distortion, drive it up. I'm going to actually turn it down now. So yeah, there we go. And in every other snapshot, we probably want this bypassed. Yeah, I don't know if I actually want to have this part of the snapshots on the others, but yeah, we'll enable it for now. And let me add this to the pause panel. Oh, that's right. It was actually on the menu canvas. Menu canvas here, Tim Snap. I'm going to add this new snapshot. I'm going to add this over here. It's located here in the project. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the pause state. And now, that's terrible. They had a much better sounding thing. Don't worry, I'm not showing you my brilliance here with sound design. I'm just showing you how you could do some stuff. So I'm going to remove that effect, kick out this snapshot here. Let's talk a little bit more about the snapshots and all that sort of cool stuff. So the snapshot itself, again, as we load them up here, you can transition between their states. That's here. Anytime that you have one selected and you move something around, it now becomes that snapshot setting. So what are they actually doing to get that to sound like it has a roll off on there? That roll off? So here's what they're actually doing. They have this low pass that is applied to the track, and here's keep an eye on this right here, right over here on the inspector. Okay, hit. Sorry, the screen capture is messing this up here. Here we go. There we go. Do you see how that changed to 365? And then back all the way to 22. Now, it being set at 22K is completely open. That means every frequency is able to pass through. When it sets to 365 or whatever it was set to, that means that all frequencies 365 hertz and below can pass through and be played. Anything above that, it's completely attenuated. So there is no frequencies that are being audible. Or any audible frequencies above whatever that cutoff is. So that's just a cutoff there. So all they're doing is the pause state is changing. You can watch. See that there? Is that cutoff frequency changing? So all they did was change the low pass, bind it to a snapshot, and now they can transition between that snapshot. So you can have effects that are enabled and then disabled between snapshots here via manipulating the sliders and things like that. I mean, you can also too access these via code as well. Now I'm not going to really get into code just yet. I want to kind of do that together, but we're starting to get to a point where we can see that these things are very, very useful. Let's also to keep the master mixer highlighted. I'm going to go in here and come to my settings panel. Watch when I change the music volume slider here in this. You see what it's doing? It's changing it down inside of the project. And it's treating these as like masters. Now what about this sound on and off? What is that doing? I don't know, but it's working. So, how's a way that you can turn all of the sound on and off in the project? Here's what I think it's doing, because it's not actually touching this here. I think it's actually taking the listener itself that's bound to the main camera, I think it's taking the listener and disabling it. That's my hunch here, but let's see. Let's see if that's what's actually going on. So I'm gonna go here, and we want to keep an eye on this spot right here, audio listener. Aha! That is indeed what they are doing. They just turn the listener off. They disable that component, and because they disable that component, we are no longer able to hear anything. Everything is still playing, but since there's no listener to route to, there's no point in playing anything. So everything just comes to a grinding halt. So that's a cool manipulative way that you can mute all the sound, but yet still save resources, as it will just halt everything. There's nowhere for it to go. It just halts it. The engine handles it really nicely. That's cool. So that's a interesting thing that they're doing there. So we have snapshots being used, we have effects being used, and there's a whole lot of effects. I just added one by accident. There is a send, receive, of course, because you can route one channel or group to another. This is very useful, send and receive, for creating channels that are just facilitating effects like reverb, the same sorts of things we do in Pro Tools, where you have the unaffected version of the sound source, and then you have a channel that is a sidechain channel that is just the wet version of that sound. So that's cool. Normalization that's here, parametric equalizer, pitch shifter, that's cool. Again, pitch shifting is on the actual sound source itself. Compressor, that's great if you're going for certain types of effects, or if you're just trying to push the loudness factor and squash things down. Again, this is a lot of power for being wrapped up in the game engine. So this is really cool, and it's easy to play with. It's very easily accessible. That's great. So with all that being said, we've talked about snapshots and we've seen the way that we can call those in effect, and this can get very complex really quick. You've also kind of seen a little bit into GUI, which is where you guys are very, very interested in right now, as a lot of our first project is going to be centered around accessing this GUI here. We still don't really see too much of a presence with any sort of manager or anything like that related to audio. The audio is sprawled around the project. So we're going to start kind of working towards centralizing our audio. There is a lot of benefit to having some sort of central point here for audio, because it is kind of all over the place. Now, a project small as this, that's okay. As projects get larger, you'll see that it's probably in our best interest to start working audio into a centralized place. That way we can handle it properly in terms of optimization and things like that, and we have a less points of failure. So the more routing back and forth that we do, there is the potential for more points of failure on this. So pros and cons with everything, but that's just some food for thought. Okay, so yeah, mixers, snapshots, groups, went over the effects that are on here. And we're starting to work now towards code, so this is exciting. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here, and we'll pick up in another one.